From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in and making Washington Watch part of your day. Well, coming up on this Thursday edition, the head of the World Health Organization is warning that the global pandemic accord, due to be finalized in May, could be in trouble because of fake news.
The IMB and the IHR working group are operating amid a torrent of fake news, lies, and conspiracy theories. We cannot allow this historic agreement, this milestone in global health, to be sabotaged by those who spread lies, either deliberately or unknowingly.
That was the WHO Secretary General Tedros Ghebreyesus talking about their global power grab that is to be finalized in May. It's not fake news, friends. It's facts. It's facts. It is facts. These are the facts. And freedom-loving Americans know it, and they don't want us to know that. We're going to talk with New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith, who has led an effort this week to keep the WHO from partnering with an organization whose goal is to promote abortion worldwide. And of course, it would be with your tax dollars. Congressman Chris Smith joins us in just a moment. Speaking of abortion, the Biden team is not hiding their objective in the 2024 election.
Literally, this issue will be ultimately determined about whether women have this freedom or not because of elections, because of what will result from elections. We want to go back to the law of the land being Roe. And I think that elections matter.
That, of course, was Vice President Kamala Harris with Katie Couric. They are falsely accusing Republicans of trying to eliminate abortion throughout the entire country when they want to eliminate all pro-life laws in every state, every pro-life law, whether it's parental notification, whether it's informed consent. That's what they're attempting to do, and we're going to talk about it. It now looks like the long-awaited bipartisan agreement in the Senate to secure the southern border and fund the war in Ukraine is unlikely to happen. What does that mean for border security and the supplemental funding for the wars in Ukraine and Israel? Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson will join us later. And speaking of the border, could a constitutional showdown between Texas and the Biden administration be in the making?
Texas has the constitutional authority to do exactly what we're doing because the authors of the Constitution, they knew there would be times when the federal government does not do its job, and states have a right of self-defense.
That was Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is defending Texas's constitutional right and obligation to defend the state against an invasion, since the Biden administration will not. We're going to get the latest from the Texas Land Commissioner, Dawn Buckingham, who has been a part of this effort in Texas. And we are regularly seeing new and unprecedented strains on our constitutional republic. And I think it's because Marxist ideology is incompatible with the framework of our republic. Ken Klukowski, former senior counsel in the Civil Division of the U.S. Department of Justice and a former White House attorney, and now Breitbart News senior legal contributor, joins me to break down the constitutional issues that are at the center of the showdown in Texas and where this legal and political fight may lead. The website, TonyPerkins.com, resources there for you and action items. Our word for today comes from Job 16, where Job replies to his friends who are of little comfort to him in his time of trial. Miserable comforters are you all. Shall words of wind have an end? Or what provokes you that you answer? I also could speak as you do. If your souls were in my soul's place, I could heap up words against you and shake my head at you, but I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the comfort of my lips would relieve your grief. Job says, if I were in your shoes, I would do a better job of comforting you. Those who have been broken and healed have a greater understanding of what is needed in a time of crisis. It's always better to listen than talk. I've never heard of anyone being accused of listening too much. And when we do speak, it should not be in the spirit of debate, but with a redemptive heart. Often it's better to ask questions than make declarative statements. For more on our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible. By the way, I invite you to join me and thousands of other Christians across the nation for the National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance. Next Wednesday, January the 30th. It'll begin at 7:30 Eastern Time, and you can join us. Now, it is sold out. It's at the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C., but you can join online. Text prayer, the word prayer, to 67742. That's prayer to 67742, and I'll tell you how you can be a part of it. All right, President Biden and the Democrats are building their 2024 campaign on abortion. Abortion on demand until birth for the entire nation. And as I said earlier this week, no matter the question for the Biden team, the answer is abortion. Joining me now to discuss this and much more, Congressman Chris Smith. He is the senior member on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. He is also the co-chair of the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus. He represents the 4th Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman Smith, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
So great to be with you, Tony. Thank you for your great work. It's amazing.
I want to start with President Biden is all in on campaigning on his commitment to abortion. I mean, he can't run on his record, so this is his central theme. Is this where the American people are?
No, absolutely not. Matter of fact, the most recent Marist poll couldn't be clearer that by a margin of 2-1, people want restrictions on abortion. There's a great deal of support for legislation to ensure that taxpayers do not fund abortion. And yet, Joe Biden, the abortion president, has integrated abortion into every single policy that he's able to do by executive order, and he's trying to do legislatively. Abortion until the moment of birth. Can you imagine that, Tony? All 9 months of pregnancy. The children would have no protection whatsoever. And the Democrats have already passed that bill twice in the House of Representatives until we took over as Republicans. But if they get it back, House, Senate, and the White House will ensure that these babies are utterly killed by dismemberment, beheading, or by chemical poisoning, or that pill, which actually starves the baby to death. I mean, these are gruesome acts that need to be called out. And yet you have a president who just talks in slogan, talks about reproductive rights. There's no right to decimate the life of an unborn child. And then, as we saw at the most recent March for Life, finally highlighting, and they did a wonderful job, the pregnancy care centers, or pregnancy resource centers, as they're often called, 2,700 of them provide great support and love and compassion and no judgments to the women and help them through their pregnancies if they are contemplating an abortion. So that's where the emphasis should be on nonviolent alternatives like pregnancy care centers, coupled with an appreciation at a time when we know more about the unborn child than ever in the history of mankind and humankind. I mean, ultrasound has shattered the myth that somehow there's no baby there. And most women, when they do see that ultrasound imaging, even if they're thinking of an abortion, so often will say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm already a mother, and I'm already going to have a child. Right. I'm with child. It's not a matter of it happens during the birth process.
I'm hoping that in this election, the 2024 election, juxtaposed to 2022, that Republicans won't, President Company excluded from this comment, because you've always talked about it. You've championed the life of the unborn, the protection of the unborn since you came to Congress. In fact, that's why you came to Congress. But I'm hoping that Republicans will talk about protecting the unborn child while the Democrats talk about abortion. But I want to go back to something you said, because I want to set the record straight for our viewers and our listeners. Nancy Pelosi was on MSNBC the other night, and I'm going to play this clip in just a moment, clip 13. She was talking about Republicans wanting to eliminate abortion, access to abortion all across the country. As you pointed out, it's the Democrats that have actually put forward a bill that would eliminate all pro-life laws all across the nation. Play clip 13.
Exactly.
The fact is they have to know what it means in their lives, that they're no longer going to have affordable care, that there will be a national ban on access to an abortion. So the election's about freedom.
Your response?
Well, freedom, there's no freedom to butcher a child. There's no freedom to behead a child. And every one of the surgical abortions behead the child. And the later that child is in his or her gestational age, the more gruesome it actually is to behold, although it's gruesome at any time. And about half of the abortions now are being done with a pill that actually starves the baby to death. I mean, I'm all for world hunger and alleviating, hunger here at home. Why are we going to starve a child and take their nutrition away to the point where they actually die?
Right.
So, they talk in euphemisms. This is Orwellian doublespeak on the part of the other side.
Yes.
They do it all the time. And
Yes.
so our people, to your point on the original comment, pro-lifers need to assert with love and compassion, respect for both mother and baby,
Yes.
and to do it consistently. Never run from this.
Right.
We're going to win this. And the polls show that when we articulate a message of life, people rally around.
Right. We wouldn't be here having this conversation if that approach did not work. That's what led to the overturn of Roe. We just need to keep doing what we've been doing for 50 years. I want to very quickly go to this issue of the Biden administration. We're looking at this domestically, but in their foreign policy, they're pushing this consistently. And this week, you wrote a letter to the World Health Organization because they are looking at partnering with a abortion group that would actually use our tax dollars, again, to promote abortion globally.
Yeah, one of the things that Tedros, who's the Director General, got his job from the Chinese Communist Party, he runs the World Health Organization. I've known him for 30 years. He's used to tell me how pro-life he was. He is absolutely pro-abortion. So he's been entering into these contracts, MOUs, with people. IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation, already has one. There's a group of lawmakers, so-called, in the European Union that go everywhere, and now they have the imprimatur of the World Health Organization to crusade for abortion on demand. And I went through, there's a document put out by the World Health Organization, and it's all about the model legislation that they want for every country. No gestational limits, just like Biden's doing and the Democrats, abortion till birth. No ability to say no, right of conscience. They say that is a barrier to access to abortion. And then they have no mandatory waiting periods. Very often when there's a parental notification or a waiting period or some other small but necessary protection, women rethink it and they come to a different conclusion. They want none of that. And that's what they're pushing. That's the World Health Organization. So the latest, and they may be doing this as recently or as early as a few days, they want to partner with the Center for Reproductive Rights, which is one of the most nefarious pro-abortion, aggressively pro-abortion groups on the face of the earth. They try to change laws. That's their job. Planned Parenthood changes laws, but they also do abortions. This group brings through case law, through lobbying of health ministries, but also of legislators, all these strategies so that the unborn child will be absolutely without protections in every country in the world. Back in 2003, I put into the congressional record a contemporaneous several-day notes of the Center for Reproductive Rights, at which they said we have to get a little dirtier in what we're doing because they deceive. Right. And it's shocking that WHO, but not surprising in a way, wants to partner with them.
Right, with the global power grab that's underway, I mean, not surprising, and this would be pushing abortion worldwide. Chris, we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us. Always great to see you.
Great to see you, Tony. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, stick with us. On the other side of the break, the showdown in Texas between Governor Abbott and President Biden.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us. The website, TonyPerkins.com. As the Biden administration's border crisis continues, Texas Governor Greg Abbott doubled down on his state's right to defend its border. Now, this follows a Supreme Court decision allowing the Border Patrol to cut the razor wire that Texas placed along its border with Mexico. Now, given that the border crisis will remain a top political issue through the 2024 presidential campaign, what can we expect as the legal and political standoff between Texas and the Biden administration escalates? Joining us now to discuss this and what's happening on the ground, the Land Commissioner for Texas, Dr. Dawn Buckingham. Commissioner Buckingham, welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be on with you today.
So lay out for us, I saw the governor making a statement yesterday that he has a constitutional obligation and a right to protect the border of Texas because there's an invasion. It does not appear that the governor's backing down.
No, I don't think you're going to see anyone in Texas backing down except a couple of our very liberal Democrat elected officials who are already joining the side of the Biden administration, as one would expect, because they sing as a choir. But Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution is very clear. If we are under invasion, we don't have to ask anyone to protect our border. And since the federal government and the Biden administration is completely abdicating its responsibility to protect our border, then we're just going to jump in and do what we have to do.
So with the federal agents, they're cutting the border wire. How's that playing out on the ground?
Well, let's back up a little bit and let's talk about the park in question. This is a park that also happens to have a golf course in it. It's a city park. The golf course happens to be where the local golf team practices every day. And really, the local citizens had no access to this park because of the flood of migrants, and some of them very dangerous, some of them not, but the staging area that the feds were using it for to process those migrants. So what Texas did is just say, hey, this is also an unsafe part of the river where the risk of drowning is very high. We want to take this off of the path of our migrants, and so we're going to reinforce it with the wire. We're going to make it safe for the local citizens to access that park. And so now what we're doing is we're just going to do everything we can for that complete operational control of the border. I'm disappointed in the Supreme Court's decision. Realize this is a temporary move about the injunction, and we're going to continue to fight.
So just to be very clear here, Texas is taking steps to protect its citizens. I mean, this is a, as you just described there, this is a hazard for the public in some cases. people coming across the border. You don't know who's coming across. You don't know what they're coming across for. So the citizens that live there, do they not have a right to expect the government to protect them?
You would think so, right? The citizens, that's what government is for, is to protect you against the evil intentions of your neighbors. And so that is exactly what we're doing. We're being sure that these kids can practice golf in a safe place. We're taking access to a dangerous part of the river where loss of life is much more likely. We're trying to take that off of the paths of the migrants coming across. And so that's all that Texas is trying to do. And the federal government is actually blocking that. When you look at the hundreds of miles of border that we have, the agents can't be everywhere. So the barriers, the wire, the walls, what they do is they channel people who are coming across into a certain area so they can be accessed by law enforcement and Border Patrol.
So, Dr. Buckingham, let me ask you this question. There are those, and right now it's just kind of saber rattling, but saying that President Biden should federalize National Guard troops there in Texas. What happens if he makes that move?
Well, he'll have 22,000 people that he gets to pay for, which is a big chunk of money. We'll see. I mean, he has the ability to do that, unfortunately. But that being said, it would be an incredibly foolish move. You would move thousands of soldiers off the border who are protecting our border. I've heard estimates it's upwards of 80% of the bodies on the border trying to keep our border safe. Let him fight that fight in the election year and win the votes and hearts and minds of people. He's not going to do it. Our border communities are amazing. They're gorgeous. The people who live there are wonderful people. They are being hurt by Biden's decisions every single day. They're completely overwhelmed by this massive migration that's coming across, and I think it's going to turn the tables.
Speak to that for just a moment. The financial burden, the infrastructure that is being impacted by this uncontrolled migration.
You're talking about 6 million people over the last several years. That is more than the single population of over 33 states. These folks come in, they're given a court date at this point. We're booking 6 years out. They're giving full access to all of our Medicaid benefits, all those types of things. My understanding is they also get cell phones. They're not allowed to work legally. They are completely overwhelming the healthcare systems, the schools. We're robbing them of their American dreams. And I keep trying to remind everybody, these are not just free people coming to a better life. They are completely enslaved by the cartels and the most violent gangs in our country. And they are basically beholden to sell drugs, sell their bodies, do terrible things. It is the largest expansion of slavery that this world has ever seen, and we just shouldn't be standing for it.
So Commissioner, then if I follow that along, the logical conclusion would be that this enslavement, this modern day slavery, is being facilitated by the policies of the Biden administration by refusing to enforce the law, not only protect the Texas citizens, the citizens of other border states, but also the migrants that are coming to this country.
Well, look at the New Hampshire primary we just saw. The top issue in New Hampshire was border security. It doesn't get much farther away from our southern border than New Hampshire. So even people in the Northeast are understanding and seeing what a problem this is and the consequences of it. So absolutely, it should be an issue. We should get complete operational control of the border. We want legal immigration. We are a country of immigrants ourselves. 1 million of us couldn't walk across the border into Mexico without some significant issues. And so we just need to realize we have a system of immigration. It could use some improvements, but we want people to come here legally and have access to the American dream.
Absolutely, and be assimilated into the American society the right way. Commissioner, thanks so much for joining us and giving us an update. Obviously, a lot of people very, very interested in what's happening in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. God bless you.
All right. Commissioner Buckingham, Land Commissioner there in the state of Texas. All right, you can weigh in. The House is going to be back next week, and this is going to be an issue. Text the word border to 67742. That's the word border to 67742, and we're going to deliver a petition to the House leadership, encouraging them to stand strong and support our southern border and those that are working to protect it. All right, coming up next, we're going to look at the constitutional issues at question here with Ken Kulkowski. Don't go away.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. In Pakistan, Asif Pervez is on death row for allegedly sending a blasphemous text message. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us. All right. Text border to 67742. That's border to 67742 to sign the petition to the House leadership. All right. The escalating situation between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the Biden administration regarding this crisis at the Texas-Mexico border raises questions straight from a constitutional law book. As governor, Abbott said in a statement yesterday, he believes that Texas has constitutional authority that supersedes federal statutes at the border. News pundits continue to assert that Texas has defied a Supreme Court order. But is that really the case? Joining me now to shed some light on these legal issues is Ken Klukowski, a former senior counsel in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice and former special counsel in the White House's Office of Management and Budget. And he has also litigated constitutional cases in the U.S. Supreme Court. Ken, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Great to be with you, Tony. Thank you.
So very quickly, how did we get here? The Texas won an appeal to the Fifth Circuit that said that they could protect this wire. That went up to the Supreme Court this week, and the court refused to allow that to stay in place until the full litigation is done. And that's what brought us to this current point of crisis. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct, Tony. It's in the lawsuit as it was going up on appeal. Texas asked for an injunction pending appeal, which is just a temporary measure. They're saying, we need help now, even while this case is proceeding. The Fifth Circuit, in an opinion, a great opinion written by Judge Kyle Duncan, explained why Texas was on the right side of the law and thus granted this injunction. Then President Biden's Solicitor General, Elizabeth Prelogar, applied to the Supreme Court to issue an emergency stay pending appeal, and by a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court, surprising many people, surprising me, granted that stay, which essentially took that temporary injunction from the Fifth Circuit and put it on the shelf so that Border Patrol agents could go back to carrying out their orders, which polling shows they do not want to carry out, but the orders they're getting from Washington to actually cut through this razor wire and removing it from the border.
Okay, so Governor Abbott says, I don't care. The Constitution gives me the right, if the federal government is not protecting us against an invasion, for me to do it. And so he's moving forward. Is that what we have?
That's right, and there are with a couple add-ons. First of all, there are those saying, "Oh, Texas is defying the Supreme Court." No, they're not. Right now, Border Patrol agents are free to be cutting the fence, and Texas personnel are free to be setting it back up. So Texas is not under a court order here. So they can continue to try and secure the border, ironically, doing the Border Patrol's job. They are carrying out the mission of the Border Patrol, which again, polling shows that Border Patrol agents wish they were being able to do right now. But that's right, you have some people setting up the wire while you have other people cutting through the wire. So it's just total chaos while this lawsuit continues.
So are we on the path to a constitutional showdown between Texas and the Biden administration?
Ultimately, it should end up at the Supreme Court on the merits, and that is because this is like a belt and suspenders approach to securing the border, okay? Is in terms of actual immigration policy, only the federal government has that under the Constitution. But among the powers that are reserved to them, states have the authority to secure the property within each of them, to protect their citizens, to set up and enforce a criminal code. So just like the federal government could be securing the border, if they refuse to, then as people come into Texas and in doing so are committing illegal acts, well, then Texas law enforcement has constitutional authority to then enforce Texas law.
Are we going to see more of this conflict between the states and the federal government when you have this ideological divide where you've got an administration pursuing, really in many ways, Marxist ideology with a constitutional republic? It just doesn't seem like it works.
Well, at least while the current president is in office, that unfortunately appears to be the case. Now, if it looks like President Trump is going to be the Republican nominee for president, if he defeats President Biden, I think you would have a fundamentally different border policy at that point. And one where I think Texas and the federal government would then be sailing in the same direction.
Very quickly, last question for you, Ken. We're up against a break, but this is what the founders envisioned as a check and balance, is it not? States being able to enforce the law if the federal government does not?
That's right. Under our Constitution, we have two separate sovereignties. You have the federal government and state governments. They are co-equal sovereigns. One doesn't override the other. The Constitution assigns to each one their own specific responsibilities. And in this case, both levels, federal and state, have powers that level of government can use that has the effect of securing the border and protecting people and property within each state.
Ken Kulkowski, always great to talk with you. You bring great clarity to these big legal issues. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony. God bless.
You know, the founders had great wisdom in the way they structured our system so that you do have these checks and balances. This is why we need to support good people at every level of government, local, state. It's so important. All right, when we come back, we're going to continue the border conversation. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin joins us next. Don't go away. More Washington Watch straight ahead.
The world is hurting. Streets are filled with crime. Families are broken. Sin is celebrated, and God is mocked. Everywhere we look, the wages of our sin are on full display. As Christians, we know that surrender to God's will is the solution to our biggest problems, but not everyone agrees. Even in church, we hear people say the most important thing is to be tolerant, that we shouldn't impose our morality on other people, and that loving our neighbor means celebrating what they do. But you can't do that. It's not that you don't love your neighbor, you do, but you care about God's opinion more than your neighbor's opinion, and this makes you different. In fact, sometimes it makes you feel alone, like you're the only one. But there is good news. You are not alone, not even close. Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these SageCons yourself, go to frc.org/SageCon and take the quiz to find out. The world is hurting, and we have the solution. We can't do it alone, but we can do it if we work together. That's what we're working toward every day. Join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
I'm Tony Perkins, and I have a prediction. This year, there will be uncertainty and continued political and cultural division. Okay, so that's not that startling of a prediction, but try this. We can have peace and even joy amid the chaos. Jesus said in John 15, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." Jesus told us there would be days like this so that our eyes would be upon Him and His promises rather than our circumstances. Now, how can we keep our eyes on Jesus? Abide in Him by being in His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. With just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But most importantly, you'll be abiding in Him daily, living in His joy and peace in these trying times. Join me on this journey through the Bible. Go to frc.org/Bible for more. Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. Let me once again remind you, border 67742. Sign the petition to the Republican House leadership to stand firm on the border. And speaking of that, as the Senate's week in Washington concludes today, another week passes without the elusive text of a bipartisan border agreement. Now, as we've been talking about, as the details of this proposed agreement have kind of dripped out, support for the combined border security and supplemental funding for Ukraine, well, the support for that's hemorrhaged among conservatives. What does that mean for border security and for Ukraine and Israel funding? Joining me now is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. He serves on the Senate Budget Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Johnson, welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Well, Tony, happy to be back. Good to see you.
So on Monday, there was optimism that we'd see text of a border security bill this week, but that eroded pretty quickly. Give us the latest.
Well, leadership staff briefed our staff and laid out the broad components of the bill, and simply have not been able to explain or answer our questions, the very legitimate questions concerning our concerns about the bill. You know, how this could actually secure the border, how this would actually force the Biden administration, which is a lawless administration, to do so. Now, I will say, I really feel kind of bad for James Langford. He has been working his tail off. He's very knowledgeable about this. He gets along well with Democrats. He was the right person to try and negotiate this. The person who I think blew it was Leader McConnell. We had multiple conversations in Senate lunches about the lawless administration and why we needed some kind of enforcement mechanism. My suggestion is, it was actually John Hoeven's idea, but my suggestion was, let's tie Ukraine funding to border metrics. Make sure that this administration has to meet certain thresholds as the money was being metered out over a 12-month time period. That had a great deal of support within the conference. I'm not sure it was universal. There might have been some people that didn't like that. But without consulting the conference at all, Leader McConnell apparently told James Langford, as our negotiator, it's not even on the table. Don't even bring it up. And we've heard from the Democrat negotiators that he didn't. And so that would have been our maximum point of leverage to actually get a deal that would secure the border. There wouldn't be this Rube Goldberg contraption that is being laid out for us right now that seems like it would normalize 4,000 to 5,000 illegal immigrants per year. Per day. That's completely unacceptable. And again, the negotiators, leadership cannot refute the concerns.
Senator, actually, you brought that point up weeks ago on this program, tying it to the metrics so that there's accountability there. But also, is it not necessarily? I think you actually brought this point up as well. It's not necessarily an absence of laws and policy that's needed. It's the enforcement of current laws. I mean, the border was pretty much secure in the final year of Donald Trump with the Remain in Mexico policy. I mean, is it not just going back to revisiting what worked before?
Yes. I mean, we have the laws on the book if they're actually enforced. If you had a president that wanted to secure the border, which is why if you're going to do a deal with this president who wants an open border, who caused the problem. I mean, Joe Biden and his Democrat colleagues in Congress are the root cause of this problem. It's like trying to negotiate with the arsonists to put out the fire. So you actually have the authority. Now, could there be things that we could pass in law that would make it easier, that would make it very difficult to challenge certain actions in court? Absolutely. But apparently the Democrats aren't really trying to negotiate those provisions. They're trying to negotiate political cover. Because Mayor Adams said the 100,000 people in New York City are going to destroy the city. You have the mayor of Chicago saying the same thing. So now the news media is having to report this. So there's political pressure on Democrats. But again, they want an open border. They really don't want to vote for provisions that would give us a secure border. They want political cover, which made it very difficult for James Langford.
Right. And I think you made the point yesterday in a press conference, or it was one of your colleagues, that if this is allowed, this new standard of 5,000 to 10,000 illegals a day being able to come across the border, we've capitulated on the current law, and this could make the situation worse if you have a president that's willing to enforce the law in the next administration.
Yeah, the concern I had, again, the thresholds as we're hearing is 5,000 per day over 7 days. That is mandatory that you have to shut down the border. I mean, I'm still asking them, how do you do that? They haven't answered that question. But at 4,000, it's discretionary. My concern is if that would tie a president's hand who actually wants to shut it down at, let's say, 500 a day.
Right.
Remember, Jay Johnson said 1,000 people a day, first of all, is a bad day for him, but it overwhelmed the system. Why aren't we setting the threshold at 1,000 and then shutting down the border? Not even accepting asylum claims, fingerprinting people and sending them home. That would work.
Right.
But 4,000 or 5,000, the cartels will meter that amount in here. And that's why I think we would normalize a flow of illegal immigrants at 4,000 or 5,000 days. Completely unacceptable. That's really the peak of President Trump's crisis, but that was only for a month. And then over 12 months, he brought it down to 570 a day.
It's kind of like legalizing lawlessness would be what the new standard would do. Let me ask the next question then, because we've been hearing for weeks, actually before the end of the year of last year, that the supplemental funding for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, that was going to be connected to the border security. If the border security provision is falling apart, Ukraine doesn't have a lot of support. What does that mean?
Well, I think you just laid it out. I think it's going to be some real trouble for people who want to provide support for Ukraine. And I think most Americans do, but they're not sure they want to just write another $60 billion blank check. What I would suggest, if people really want to push that through, at a minimum, pay for it. There's $400 billion of green energy boondoggle spending the Democrats passed under reconciliation. Goldman Sachs has an estimate that will actually cost about $1.2 trillion. Why don't you at least start from the standpoint that you're going to pay for any supplemental funding? You can also ask the question, what are we getting for $880 billion a year in defense spending? Why is everything an add-on? Why is everything supplemental?
Yeah, good question. I think that's the only way they're going to be able to move forward. Now, there is, I think, broader support for the small amount of money, $13 billion for Israel. The House already passed that with the pay-fors, offsetting that from the IRS new money. Will we see any movement in the Senate on that? It's been languishing over there for weeks.
We should see movement. Again, this is a perfect example of, Democrats never compromise. Their view of compromise is for Republicans to cave, which in the past, generally Republicans always have. It's their way or the highway. It's always been that way. They're not willing to say, yeah, we also want to support Israel, and okay, we'll suck it up and we'll reduce the funding for the IRS by $13-14 billion. They just refuse to do that. Hopefully public pressure will get them to change their mind.
Senator Johnson, I want to switch gears here. You have been the strongest voice bringing awareness to what is happening with the World Health Organization there in the Senate. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the WHO's Director General, was saying earlier this week that the pandemic accord, which you and I have talked about multiple times, that the WHO has been working on for the last 2 years, is at risk of failing because of fake news and disinformation. And frankly, I'm actually a little encouraged by that because it tells me we're having an impact.
Well, first of all, that's an explanation from a totalitarian. We may be. I'll tell you, we're not getting much traction here in Congress. It's a partisan issue. My amendment on a bill was completely partisan. Every Republican except for the bill sponsor voted for my amendment that would have deemed that those amendments a treaty subject to ratification in the Senate, and every Democrat voted against that. So Democrats actually apparently want to give up U.S. sovereignty. It's maybe good news that this is being delayed a little bit. This will probably need a global lobbying effort. We need to get to other countries and let them realize, too, that their national sovereignty, their health freedom may be taken away from them in this very dangerous negotiation. So this has got to be an all-out effort right now between now and when they bring this to a vote.
Yeah, in May. But they're also they're doing a full court press to scare people into this. I want to play a clip of Ghebreyesus last week at the World Economic Forum, where he had this to say, not only about the agreement, but kind of their latest scare tactic.
The other key in order to have better prepared and to address the disease X is the pandemic agreement. The pandemic agreement can bring all the experience, all the challenges that we have faced, and all the solutions into one. And that agreement can help us to prepare for the future in a better way, because this is about a common enemy.
So I don't know if you caught that. He's hard to understand, but disease X is something that they have now introduced. Now, it's a make-believe fictional disease, but they're suggesting that it's 20 times greater in terms of its impact than COVID-19. I mean, this looks like a scare tactic.
It's a total scare tactic. Eisenhower in his farewell address warned us about four things. The final thing is he talked about we cannot let global society fall into a state of dreadful fear and hate. But we've seen that with it's climate change. It's scare the you-know-what out of people so that you can gain greater control. They did the pandemic, and now that the pandemic is passed and all their measures weren't completely adopted, now they've got to make up disease X with a 20% mortality rate. I mean, this is sick, but this is what tyrants do. They control people. They take away your freedom based on a state of fear, of dreadful fear.
And we know from history that people will surrender fundamental freedoms when they are motivated and moved by fear. And I think it's a great parallel that you make with climate change. I mean, that's what we're told. We've got to give up national sovereignty. We've got to give up a quality of life because we have this carbon footprint. Only certain people have to give it up. I mean, the next thing, it could be, the planet could be targeted by an asteroid. So what are we going to have to surrender for them to protect the planet from an asteroid? The reality is we know that the World Health Organization, and you've spoken to this very clearly, was totally inept in COVID-19. So why would we give them more power?
Well, again, look at how much freedom was taken away and given up during the pandemic. And you have to understand the pandemic, in the end, the infection fatality rate was very similar to flu. We have a flu season every year, and elderly people are vulnerable to it. People with certain comorbidities are vulnerable to it, just like they were to coronavirus. But we destroyed people's lives. We took away their freedom, shut down churches, but kept liquor stores open. It is shocking how people complied, but that's how effective fear is in the hands of a tyrant or tyrants.
So Senator, final question here for you. What's their end game? What are they after here at the World Health Organization with this pandemic accord?
A new world order, total control, a borderless world. I mean, that's part of the strategy behind an open border here in America. We have a land of plenty of opportunity. The rest of the world doesn't. Let the rest of the world in. That's their mindset. They want power. They want control. You will own nothing, but you will be happy. That's basically their rallying cry. It's sick. It's frightening. That is something to actually fear, the loss of your freedom. I'm just begging everybody, jealously guard your freedom, because there are a lot of people, a lot of tyrants, and they're in the news and they're in leadership positions that want to take your freedom away.
And the only thing standing in the way are freedom-loving Americans.
Absolutely.
Senator Ron Johnson, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to spend with us today.
Stay well. Take care.
All right, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. I just want to put an exclamation point on what he had to say. And we've been talking, and first off, I want to say thank you to our viewers and listeners who have responded so well on this issue of WHO. We have been tracking this very, very closely, and we'll continue to do so. But we need you to weigh in on this. We need to get the United States out of the World Health Organization. Yes, we can defund it. That's what Congress can do. President Trump, former President Trump, he pulled us out. He was getting us out of this mess. Of course, under the current administration, we're in with all fours. And I just, again, this is a matter of prayer, because I do believe, as he talked about this, a new world order. I think this is what we read in Revelation. This is the precursor. This is at the tip of the spear of globalization, global government. And if you look at and read this pandemic agreement, this accord, this is what it sets the stage for. It will, and this is why, Tedros is so, fake news. Don't believe what you're hearing. It's because people are exposing what they're doing. We're exposing what they're doing. This is a global power grab, and we can't let it happen. So we're going to continue to track this. I need you to weigh in on this with your members of Congress and tell them to get the United States out of the World Health Organization. Also, as we were talking with the Senator, the border issue. So text border to 67742. All right, folks, out of time for today, but I want to thank you for joining us. And until next time, I leave you once again with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you have taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.